everybody, it's me, your girl T Bird, and welcome to Queen Conversations, stories of trepidation, tragedy, and triumph. I am so excited today for you to be included on this amazing conversation. Let me tell you about this beautiful woman that's sitting in front of you. This is Queen Kimberly Fleiming. She is a compassionate grief coach who will walk with you during your season of grief and difficult times. She's a certified transformational grief coach and founder and CEO of Mourning to Dancing, where she uplifts and supports those who are ready to create their renewed life. Her biggest aspiration in this endeavor is to create an atmosphere of love, empathy, compassion, and understanding for those who are ready to live again, laugh again, and love again. Kimberly wants her clients to know that with her, they have a non-judgmental, active, compassionate listening ear to help usher them into their renewed life. Good afternoon, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, Queen.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So before we get started, I just always like to share a couple did you knows with our listening audience. Did you know that according to WebMD, grief has a physical effect on the body? I mean, it can actually, I know you know. It can actually cause an overwhelming sense of tiredness, exhaustion, and confusion. You can have difficulty with concentration, changes in sleep and appetite. It can cause nightmares, crying, social isolation, restlessness, and it can even cause physical aches and pains, anxiety attacks, and difficulty breathing. I was amazed to find that out today. And according to the certified anxietydisorders.com, it says that survivors can suffer from PTSD when they lose a loved one to a trauma. I was amazed when I heard that. You know, I think one of the craziest things about grief is none of us ever really want to talk about it. And we don't talk about it until we're unfortunately going through it. And even then, a lot of times we don't talk about it. So today's episode is entitled Mourning to Dancing. And you're going to want to lean in real close, get a pad and pen, because you're going to want to take some notes on this one, okay? But before we get started, Queen, I need to know, and you know that I ask everyone that I sit down with this question, when did you discover your inner queen?
Well, that is a lifelong discovery for me. Just the mere fact of knowing that I am a queen and I am royalty, according to the Lord. I am a queen. I am royalty. But to me, it's a constant unfolding. As I learn one layer of myself, another begins to unfold. So it's a constant renewal of queendom, a renewal of my crown.
I love that. That's awesome. You know, it's funny. I love all the different responses that I get when I ask that question. And that's why it's kind of become my signature thing. Yeah, that ever evolving piece in our lives. And I think if we do life right, we're always growing and we're always learning something new. I think the day that I'm not learning anything new, I'm just going to close my eyes and go.
Absolutely.
That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with me. So tell me, first, can you explain for everyone who may not know, what are the stages of grief? Because I've heard that there are 5. I've heard that there's 7. As I was researching for this, I even found 12. I was like, well, which is it?
I tend to go with the 7 model. And they're all, if you view it this way, they're just a marker, sort of, kind of like you it's not that you're going to ease through each stage. It just gives you like a kind of a guide as to where you may be. So when you call them stages, people think that okay, I'm going to do one, then I'm going to go to the next, then I'm going to the next. you could be in various stages. You can go from 1, to 7. You can go from 5 to 3. It's, a constant roller coaster of emotions.
Got it.
So when we say that there are stages, we're just giving people a guide. That's all. It's a guide, pretty much.
Got it. Alrighty. So will you share the 7 that you kind of go with?
Yes. So the first one is shock and denial. So during this stage, you're in disbelief and you're stunned as to, and you have a feeling of denial. You can't believe it. Like, oh, I can't believe it. And then acute pain hits. So really, the shock and denial is God's way of protecting you from acute pain, because when something nicks you, or like a pin, or you get ready to get your blood drawn or a needle, the person, the phlebotomist, asks you, to take a deep breath, or let's count 1, 2, 3. So a shock and denial is like your count 1, 2, 3, and then after that there's pain. So the second one is pain and guilt, right? So after you actually realize a little bit of what happened, then the pain and the guilt enters. You feel like, oh my God, I should have, could have, I wish I should have, could have, would have done this, or, and you're blaming yourself. And it actually hurts. It feels like somebody punched you. Some people describe it as like a shooting pain in the heart, the beginning of heartbreak. The next one is anger and bargaining. You get mad. I mean, some people get mad to the point where there is physical damage to the self, to your body, or physical damage to others, or physical damage to property. And you try to make deals, or you try to bargain with God, saying, if I do this, will you bring my loved one back? Will you bring my life back as I know it? Then the next one is depression, reflection, and loneliness. It's a time where you sort of kind of realize what really happened to you and what happened to your loved one. And you are you lack hope. You lack, you lack resilience. You lack strength during this time. And you isolate yourself. And you reflect on the good times, the bad times, or whatever you decide, to reflect on. And then the next one is the upward turn. And this is one of my favorites. The upward turn is as you begin to adjust to life without your loved one, you're beginning to see a little glimpse of light, just a little glimpse of light during this time. And with a holistic approach, I help you to discover what that is, what the renewed life or the new life may look like without your loved one. And then it's reconstruction and working through that period of time where you begin to rebuild and work yourself through discovering who you are at your core, at the core of you in your grief. And you're beginning to, okay, all right, I can live, I can do this, I can move on, I can, begin to see that I am valuable and I am worthy of working on. Then there's acceptance and hope. You pretty much fully accept the fact that your beloved one is gone, but yet you learn to live with it. You learn to work with it, and you're operating in your new and renewed life.
I love the way you explained each one of those. Because like I said, I don't think we actually think about grief. It's one of those conversations we don't really want to have. And we definitely don't understand it. I always say that death makes people weird. We don't know what to say, we're not really sure what to do, but I really felt like this conversation, particularly with all that is happening in our world. We've been on quarantine with this coronavirus. There's so much social unrest for those that have been murdered in the streets. I mean, we literally I watched George Floyd be murdered on national TV. That was Good Morning America. It was disturbing. And I really felt like this conversation was so pertinent now and so necessary now. Because as a whole, as a people, we're hurting, as a culture, but because of the loss of loved ones during the coronavirus, so many other people are hurting and grieving at the same token. I know many families that were touched, unfortunately, and lost loved ones during this quarantine. So I'm so grateful that you're sitting down with us and you're walking us through it. Tell me, what actually led you to becoming a grief coach? What walked you into this line of work?
Well, back to 2008. I was a full-time student at Temple University, pursuing one of my number one dreams is getting my bachelor's degree. I was like really, I was excited. I was happy. One day, I was getting ready to go to school, and my husband he was sick, and he called out work. I said, "Oh, you're not feeling well. What's going on?" I have a really bad cold. I just feel like going to work. So I came home. So I went to school, came home, and he was really he could barely breathe. So I had to get him down the steps by myself and rush him to the hospital. To make a long story short, my husband passed away, and that was so totally devastating to me. He, oh my gosh, he was my love. He was my soulmate, and at the time we had 3 children, and it was just crushing to me. And as a result, so every day I was looking for somebody. I was looking for a reflection of myself and others. I was looking for other widows that I could, that I could relate to. I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't find a support group. And I tried different groups. I just, nothing resonated within me. And then I had to take a look at myself, saying that you are what you are looking for. You're what you're looking for. You're so how do I do that? How do I do that? And then that birthed Mourning to Dancing. But prior to that, I didn't know how I was going to help others like me during this difficult time. So I thought that my plight was to widows. Through time, it morphed into helping others, whether you're a widow, whether you have lost yourself, lost a pet, lost relationships, a divorce, it just evolved and just, became bigger than I thought it would be, in helping people to get through this difficult time. Not only people that have lost spouses, but anybody who has lost anybody, it became a lifelong journey for me to help people like myself. And I've lost other relatives. I lost my mother a couple years prior to losing my husband. That was devastating, but I had him to help me through that. But since he's gone, I've rediscovered who I am without him, without life, rediscovering the new Kimberly, the renewed life that was always buried deep within, just didn't take the time to look or to take a deeper dive into who I really am.
Wow. That had to be, how long did it take you to get to that place to decide, you know what, I'm going to turn my pain into a passion?
Well, you know what? So it happened April 3rd, 2008. During that time, I would say about 2010, 2009, 2010, I wanted to share that with others.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the development, it took me a couple more years after that to actually say that I wanted to be a grief coach. I didn't even know how to go about doing it. And then I was looking on the internet one day, this is what I want to do. This is it. This is it. This is it. God always points you in the direction you want to go. I didn't know how I wanted to do it, whether it was through a nonprofit organization, through going back to school to be a psychologist. That's what I wanted to do. But then when I saw, what a grief coach does, I said, this is it. It just felt right. It felt at home with me. It felt like, oh, this is it. It was, I got an aha moment when I discovered that. And that was about 2010. And took me, of course, a couple years to really develop what I really wanted to do. So in 2016, that's when I got the LLC. I got my coaching license and things like that.
Well, obviously, too, it took you time to heal.
Yeah, it did. It took some time for God to mend my broken heart. I didn't realize that my heart was so broken until it became mended. I didn't know I was that broken, or that I thought that I hid my grief well. I thought that I hid it, but people around me saw it. They knew, but they also knew when God mended my broken heart, because I looked so totally different. I looked different. I felt different. I felt like I could do backflips. I honestly felt like, it was just so freeing. It was, to describe it, it was like 1,000 aha moments in one instant. But it took some time. It took time. It took years. It took working through. It took embracing each and every opportunity that life presented itself in the presence of grief and loss. Had I not embraced those opportunities, I wouldn't have discovered what lied dormant on the inside of me, because I was the yes person. I was the wife. I was an encourager. I'm the supporter. I'm always saying yes, 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 yes to others, but not saying yes to myself. Mm. But had I not embraced that, I would not have experienced God mending my broken heart. He slowly and surely mended that heart. And when I tell you, I wish I can go back to that time, like, that mended heart, but I'm here. I'm living proof that you do get through that experience. Not that you're ever going to ever feel sad or sorrowful ever again, but you'll look at it differently. And you'll have tools to deal with it, help you cope with it, help you live with it.
Yeah. I've got so many questions running through my mind. Because, how long were you guys married at the time when this happened?
Okay. So he died in April. Our anniversary would have been in June this month. So he died a couple months shy of our 16th anniversary. So 16 years.
16 years. That's a long time. That's a long time. And I've been married. I'm coming up on 27 years myself. So I can't imagine what that moment is like, because when we take our loved ones to the hospital, we fully expect them to come home with us, especially when it's something like, I have a cold. I'm just not feeling well. I think, again, like we said, in this time of coronavirus, people sent their loved ones to the hospital. with the expectation that they were going to come home.
Yes.
And they didn't come home.
Right.
So kind of walk me through, if you would, what was it like that day when you came home from the hospital?
When I came home from the hospital after the news of,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come home alone. I had my children, and that was hard. It was hard. Some family members brought them to the hospital, which made that easier for me to tell them. I just told them that your father is gone. And after that, I just broke down after that. I came home, and I was in disbelief. I was looking around like, what? So what now? What now? I was numb.
Yeah.
I was numb. But in a sharp mommy mood, wanting to take care of, hover over my children. That was my number one priority. That was my priority, taking care of my children. But when I came home, I couldn't sleep for weeks. I wasn't like really sleeping. I was barely eating because I was like, what in the he went in the hospital, so that they said he had pneumonia. Then they found out he had a heart problem. We didn't know he had a heart problem, but I didn't expect him to die.
Right.
So I was like, I was in shock. I was numb.
And how do you recommend, because you mentioned your children, how old were they at the time?
So my youngest was 5. She just had her 5th birthday. Her birthday was in February. Her 5th birthday. Kendall was 12. My middle son is 12. He was 12. And then Gary was 14.
And how did you walk them through their grief?
My children are funny. So I'm all about counseling and coaching, and I'm an advocate about reaching out and getting help. So I signed them up for the Children's Center for Grieving. I pulled up to the center, and they said, I'm not going there. I don't need that. As a parent, I was not going to force them to do what they didn't want to do. I wasn't going to force them. I did suggest that they sit in for 1 session, and that was it. They never went back ever again. So how I walked them through was open dialogue. Anytime they wanted to talk to me, and I always provided a space. I made sure that that holidays, their father's birthday, Father's Day, I always celebrated big with them. I took them back to his grave a couple times, and we always shared funny things that he said, because he had a dry sense of humor too. Both of us did, but he was funny. He was funny and then not funny at the same time, So it was funny, and so I always provided open dialogue. That was, being their safe space or their safe place. That's how I walked them through, and I was always honest with them, telling them exactly what happened. And we still talk about it till today. My oldest is 27. My middle son is 24. And my daughter's 17 now. So we still talk about it now. And we look at pictures, which is, really helpful. Looking at pictures and just keeping the memory alive by talking about them, and not just shoving them in the corner like he was never here, because I see his reflection in them every day. Every time I look at them, I see their father. So yeah.
I think it's beautiful that your children were kind of your first clients. That's what I'm hearing.
I never
and I think it's beautiful. It's true. I think especially, like I said, death makes people weird. And I think especially with our children, because we go into such protective mode of them. And we're afraid that something we say is going to hurt them in some way, or make them feel bad if they're having a good day. And I think sometimes we forget to let them see, this is how I'm feeling today. I'm hurting today. How are you feeling today? We don't remember sometimes that they're our children and they're our babies, but they're many human beings, and they've got feelings and emotions and thoughts about things. And I love the fact that you reached out for the help and the counseling, that you said, maybe this isn't my wheelhouse. I can't maybe walk them through this. Let me get the help that they need. And they were like, we don't need nobody but you, Mom. We got, we'll walk through this together. And I think, I think you're having an aha right now about that. And that's why this is why I think it's so important that we have these conversations. And, you emailed me earlier and you said, I'm excited to have this queen-versation, if that's a word. And I said, it is now in my mind. So thank you for that, because that is so awesome. That's really what we're talking about, right? We wind up in the midst of something so tragic, finding joy and finding moments, and you found purpose. You walked right into a purpose. Tell me some of the things you did to walk through it, because as you've mentioned, right, when you came home, you were in shock. You had the shock and the guilt. You went through the pain, the anger, the whole 9 yards. Were you angry?
At some point, yeah. At some point, I wasn't immediately angry. I wasn't, but the anger, the anger grew through the years, and let me tell you why. I don't like. I am a non-confrontational person. So whenever I had to deal with things with the children, with school, or them, in an argument or a fight or something like that, or I had to go to the school to do something, I'll be pissed at him that he wasn't here. You should have been the one having to deal with this, because I don't like, dealing with. I don't like to be uncomfortable. I don't like doing the uncomfortable. But God was putting me in that position to do it, developing the fortitude in the grief to do what I had to do for my children and for myself. Learning to be confrontational. You have to confront some things inside of grief and outside of grief in order to deal with the things. You can't bury your head in the sand, which I tended to do often, bury my head in the sand and ignore the
I was actually editing it, and I was almost finished. And we did have internet connection problems yesterday. It was weird. Never had this happen before. And then when I went to edit it, I was almost done, and something happened with the program, and I'm gonna have to start all over again. It was like 6 hours gone. So I was like, you know what? But that's just how I know that I'm doing what God wants me to do. And I know that I'm in the right place at the right time, and so are you. So I'm gonna lob you the question one more time. Kim, tell me, were you angry when this happened?
I wasn't angry at the time when it first happened, but in time and through the years, I began to develop an anger. Yes, I was angry because when it came to the children, and if I had to go to the school because they got in trouble, or a confrontation, or a fight, or if something happened, I would be angry because he's supposed to be the one that's supposed to do that kind of stuff, not me.
Right.
I'm the quiet one. I'm the reserved one. I like things to be smooth. I don't like when my feathers get ruffled. I like things to be smooth and even kill. And I was pissed. So I was, for lack of a better word, I was pissed. Yeah, I was mad every time I had to do that. But then every time I had to do it, it developed in me, you know, a fire or a tenacity, you know, that I wouldn't have discovered had I not embraced the opportunity that present itself in the presence of grief. If I didn't, if I didn't embrace that, I wouldn't have discovered that that was on the inside of me. I wouldn't have known, because I like things to be, you know, smooth. I'm non-confrontational. I don't like confrontation. I just don't like it. But I know that it's necessary at times. It is so necessary that we have to confront things. We should not bury things on the inside, just like you shouldn't bury your grief. If you do, it turns into sickness, it turns into cancer, it turns into ulcers, all types. The hospitals are filled with people who haven't dealt with grief, who bury their feelings, who bury, you know, things that have happened to them, and not confront them, not deal with those things. It makes you sick, and I didn't want to be sick. So every aspect of the grief, when it came to me, I did embrace it. That's how I got through. I embraced it.
That's powerful to say, because, you know, I think when we lose someone, like you said, you know, in those moments where you had to now start handling the things that he would have handled, right? Mm-hmm. And what's your husband's name?
Gary Anthony Fleiming.
Okay. So, because I think it's important too that we use their names, you know, right? We that's part of remembering, and that's part of honoring. And so for all those times that Gary would have handled something with the kids, you know, to be able to say, first of all, I'm so ticked off, I'm so pissed that you're not here to do this. That's so real, right? Because you're experiencing it, you know. I remember when my grandfather passed, I had a closer relationship with him in a lot of ways than I did with my grandmother, because not that they didn't both love me, not that they didn't both take care of me, but I was his little girl in a lot of ways. And so I remember saying, you know, and sometimes me and my grandma, because I'm very much like her in a lot of ways, we would bump heads from time to time. And I remember at one point looking up and saying, really, God, you took grandpa and left me with her for real? But you know, we feel a sense of guilt for feeling that way.
Yeah.
You know, because they're already gone and now you're mad at them too. Like, so it's this compounded, you know, it's these compounded emotions, you know, and it's so funny how we have to process through it and unpack it. So to hear you say that, and I'm sure right now, you know, Gary is looking over the portals of heaven and chuckling because he knew you could handle it all along. That's why he chose you. And I'm assuming, I don't know, but you can confirm for me, I'm assuming that you having to learn to tackle those things, to learn to confront things, has really helped you in being able to help others confront.
Yes, it has. I found out that with that, being open and being honest about how you feel is so key. Acknowledge the anger, acknowledge how you feel, then you can better process it, you can better deal with it, you can better channel it. Because it's not that you want to completely get rid of it, but while you're in that anger state, you want to do it in a healthy way, not in a way that will harm yourself or harm others. But yes, and God gives us emotions and feelings for reasons, for use. They're coping, some of them are coping mechanisms, some of them are ways that we, you know, process things. They're ways that we deal with things. And without them, we'll be robots. the world wouldn't be colorful.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that 2020 has been a year of catastrophic loss for people. Not only in, with the quarantine, with coronavirus affecting so many, and so quickly, and of course, with what's happening in our communities with more Black and brown people being murdered in the worst ways possible. What are some basic tips, even 3 or 4, that you would give to people to begin to start processing the grief that they're in right now?
So first, I would say acknowledge that you are in that process, that you are grieving at this time. I would go as far as to say that each and every one of us that were affected by the whole COVID are in a state of grief. What I mean by that is a state of loss. So some of us may have lost loved ones. Some of us may have lost jobs. You lost opportunities. You lost the ability to be able to connect with a loved one in person. So many different losses. So just acknowledging the loss and welcoming the emotions that come from the loss. So if you're experiencing sadness, embrace that time. So if you're experiencing feeling lonely, embrace that time. So go with your feelings and embrace that time. Don't suppress it. And find a person with a kind, compassionate, and listening ear. One that would be able to handle your grief without judgment. Somebody that would be able to listen to you fully without interrupting. We all, at some point in time in our lives, want to be able to be heard. We just want to be heard. And that does make us feel better when we feel like we're being heard and understood. So finding that person or group of people, just like we're talking now on Zoom, via Zoom, other ways that we can connect to people, telephone, Skype, different types of ways that we can, even via text. Some people like to see people face to face. You have FaceTime, you have people that have iPhones, you have that Google Duo, all types of ways that you can see a person face to face. Those are some types of coping mechanisms that we can, use in grief. And also, one of the top ways that I cope is using meditation, deep breathing in and out. And that helps you to be in the present time and be in the here and now. And it helps you to process things. When the first thing, one of the first things that happens to you after you're born, the doctor clears away your airways in your nose and helps you to breathe. So after you hear of a tragedy or someone dying or experience a loss, you tend to hold your breath. I can't stress it enough for you to be able to breathe. You need to breathe, and taking your time to do so. Knowing that at the sound or when you hear of a loss, it's not meant to kill you. It's not meant to overtake you, but that's why shock, the first one of the first stages of grief, or we want to call it the first stages of grief, that is God's design to protect you from acute pain. It's designed to help you to begin your process, to begin to navigate your way through this. we're all in this together. I say we're all interconnected in some kind of way. Each and every person in this whole wide world. None of us were able to go anywhere. We weren't able to do things as we were. We were all in the same boat, no matter how much money you had, no matter your social economic standing or whatever. We all were in the same boat. So we all can reach out to each other. If you know of somebody that passed away, reaching out, supporting others when you know that they've lost a loved one in this pandemic, that helps for you to be able to connect with somebody, because everybody grieves in different ways. So some of us might not be as outgoing, or some of us might not even want to acknowledge that we need the help or want somebody to reach out to us. So, I mean, it's up to us, up to those who aren't exactly grieving at that time, that we would reach out and do. And most people that are grieving, most people, I would say, I'm just going to make a blanket statement, most people just want to be heard. They just want to get out, what happened to their loved one, even if it just takes you just sitting there and giving them an ear, sitting there and just taking the time out, or even sending a text or a phone call or whatever. Sometimes you don't know what to say. Don't say anything. I'm here for you. That's it. Or doing something practical for them. Grocery shopping, that helps, because like I said, during my journey, I didn't want to eat, but it was people that brought food, to feed the children. Even if I didn't eat, I made sure, or they made sure that the children ate, doing practical chores around someone's house, even if you aren't invited in. Lawn work, sweeping up their, pathway in front of their house or the driveway. You have no idea how long or how far that goes with somebody when they're in the middle of their grief, because they don't think to do those things, because they're just, you could be stuck. But doing practical things and being there. Sometimes when you ask a grieving person what they want, or sometimes they can't even formulate it. They can't, you don't know what you want. But sometimes you think about who the person is, think about who the person is and act accordingly.
Those are great tips. And I find myself, I'm like you, I got to be honest. So whenever I hear of a loved one who's lost someone, or I reach out to a friend and I say, I'll say, I don't know what to say.
Right.
I don't know what to say, but I want you to know that I'm here, that I love you. And if you need me, I'm here. What do we do with, because you mentioned this, some people isolate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a lot of my relationships, my friendships, we have rules, right? You can go be by yourself, but like for no more than 72 hours. That's about all I'm giving you. But of course, in a tragic situation, or when someone has lost someone, you can't necessarily put those time frames on them. But what do you do when you feel like they've been isolated too long? Because like you said, when we're not in the grieving process, we have a different understanding, and we can sometimes see that person has kind of withdrawn from everybody. What's the best way to reach them if they're not answering their phone and they're not answering the door when you call? And I mean, of course, short of calling the police to do a well check, but which can turn into something else these days if we're not careful. What's another way that we can reach out, do you think?
So you mentioned pretty much all the ways that you would reach out to a person. You would call, you would show up at their door, you would send reinforcements, you would, call the police and do a well check or whatever. But And then to knowing the person would help too. Knowing, what a person's limitations are. Everybody's different. You don't know how you're going to feel, or, you don't know how you're going to feel in that instance. So it's no top reason or no best way, but the way that I know how to handle a person in isolation is to give them tools before they get to that point. I know that in an ideal society, everybody's going to prepare. You want people to be prepared to go into that. But if you're there at the beginning with them and walking with them, and you realize that they're about to go into an isolation state, or you haven't heard from you hear from them more sporadically than you normally do, giving them tips in their isolation. So helping them to do it in a healthy way, because we do need that period of time when we are alone, doing that time of self-reflection and reflecting back on the memories that you had with that person. Is no, we sometimes we standing on the outside of a person being isolated. The person being isolated can feel like, you're intruding on my privacy, so it's kind of a thin line. It's a thin line there, but you can give them tools while they're in it, or like right before they're in that isolation period, because you don't want it to last. You don't want it to go over. Me personally, I wouldn't let it go over 2 to 3 months. I wouldn't even let it go that, because for me, I was when I isolated myself, and I this is crazy, but when I isolated myself, I would come out periodically. I would come out, you know what I mean? Nobody knew I was isolating myself, but I would come out periodically. I would go to work, come home, and that was it. Like, I didn't talk to anybody. I wasn't even on social media at that point. I wasn't, that was my isolation was putting on a mask while I was out. But then when I came in, every time I came out, crying in my room, looking at the pictures, at the wedding album and things like that. So everybody's different.
So you were social distancing before it was a thing.
Come on. Yes. I was a professional. So I thought. I was a professional. Yes. Uh-huh.
That's so amazing. So tell me how you turned your mourning into dancing.
It was a long process. It took about 6 years for God to mend my broken heart. It was a 6-year process. But when I tell you that if I can bottle that feeling, I'll be rich right now. If I could sell that, that feeling, I was the happiest person in the whole wide world. You couldn't tell me nothing. But I didn't realize how badly my heart was broken until it was mended, if that makes any sense. Yes. I didn't realize how deeply I was hurt and I was broken. But as I stated earlier, that when I embraced those opportunities, when I embraced all the emotions and feelings that came along with grief, and I worked through them. I did go to grief groups. I went to seminars. And I had a circle of friends who helped me in this process. They were patient with me, and they saw the hurt, wanted to take it away, but knew that I had to go through it. I had to. As much as they wanted me not to hurt, they knew that I had to go through the hurt in order to get to the point where I am now. So like I said, I realized that my heart was mended in 2016. I was, oh my gosh, if I can take that feeling, I wanted to do backflips. Like I really, and it took God time. it took time. It wasn't that I had instances of happiness and where I can see some light, but it wasn't completely light until that heart was completely mended. It wasn't, as I explained in the upward turn, you begin to see glimpses of light and hope at that, during that tunnel stage. You do begin to see some glimpses of light. But when, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, like I said, I didn't realize I was mourning until I began to dance. I was, oh, you couldn't tell me nothing. You couldn't tell me, oh my gosh, I was ready. I was ready to live again, love again, and laugh again. I was ready. I wanted to be happy again, like totally happy, without feeling guilty that I was happy or that I was moving on with my life and in my life, moving on to what God wanted me to do, moving on to the vision I had for my life. Because when my husband was here, it was, it was about his vision and our vision together. But I didn't know that I could have my own vision too. But I'm realizing that, now God has given me a vision, and now I can carry out his kingdom mandate. I can do what he has placed on my life to do, because I'm valuable and I am worth it. I am. And those who are assigned to my voice need to hear, and they need to buy into the vision and need to join me in my quest. And then they'll be able to see that. And for me, they'll be able to see that God does mend broken hearts. You do get through this experience. Not that you'll ever feel sad again, or not that you forget about the loved one, or oh, this is it. This is no, it's not that. You can live with it, and you can still move on and still grow in your passion and what God has for you and in your vision, because you still here. You're the living legacy. Why not live it? Why not live your life? Not even for the loved one, but for you.
Nice. Yeah, because when we live our life for the loved one, not for the loved one, but you living your life for you honors who your husband was in your life.
That's it.
Because the truth of the matter is, when we really sit down and think about it, if Gary was here, he would not want you hurting and grieving and still not doing what you were created to do. Yes. And I think a lot of times, I think a lot of times we get so caught up in the loss that we don't realize. I see people all the time, it's 25, 30 years later, and they're still talking about, I miss them every day, and and I get it. Mm-hmm. But I also, I feel like if you believe in heaven, then you have to know that you're going to see him again. So there has to be almost a celebration of their life, mm-hmm. as you continue to press forward in what you still have left to do, because they finished their assignment. I think for those of us who we say, oh, they were gone too soon. It happened too fast. But we have to believe that they were here for the time that they were allotted to be here. Yeah. And what are you going to do with your time? And you can't spend it missing what's gone on. You gotta hang on to what you have and embrace what you have and where you are. So I think it's beautiful that you've turned mourning into dancing. How did you decide that that's what you were going to call the company, your business?
Well, I got a text from my aunt because I was wrestling with what I was going to name it. I had other names. I had Hidden Treasures. That was the original name. And then she sent me a text one day. She said, "Kim, I was her pastor preached on this, and she sent me the scripture, and I read it. I said, oh, this is the name of my company, Mourning and Dance." I got an aha moment. Mourning, because that's how I felt. Like I felt like, I was in mourning for so many years. And then when he made my broken heart, I was, I felt like, yeah, yes, I can dance again. Like, this is it. This is it. And I wanted people to feel the same way. Like, I know everybody has their journey, but I wanted them to know that he will turn your mourning into dancing. It's true. Because I'm living proof. I'm living proof. And if he could do it for me, he could do it for you.
I love that. I love that. It's funny, when I was researching you, I Googled you, and the first thing that came up was Mourning to Dancing. And I said, oh, that's what we're calling this episode. That's it right there. You saved me a whole lot of work. I didn't have to try and figure it out. It was so, I think it is beautiful, right? It's like that that sunrise after the storm passes,
Yeah.
When we finally take that deep breath and we realize that we can live again.
Yes.
So I know that you walk with people during their time of mourning and difficulties.
Yes.
What do you do to stay positive in the face of so much pain and grief? Because every time I see you, you're smiling. You even were one of the ladies who came and served at my father's repast this year. And, there you were, offering smiles and just hugs and comfort. You sang in the choir. And what do you do to maintain that joy?
When I see people who are grieving, the reason why I can smile is because I know that one day you will genuinely smile and laugh again, because I did. So I can smile with you. I can smile, in your presence, because I know that one day you will smile again. I look at movies, funny movies, comedy. I love comedy, I love to laugh, so I'll do that. I look at movies, anything to, to give me joy, or I'll talk to my kids, and I'll call friends, or, get on the phone and just laugh, like, stay positive. I love quotes. So I look at a lot of positive quotes. I'll Google in a minute encouraging quotes, and I'll encourage myself in that way. I'll go on social media and look and see somebody, making a funny post or a live video or whatever, and I'll just laugh. That keeps me, it keeps me laughing and staying positive. And I turn to the Word of God. I turn to the Word. I turn to the truth of the Word, and that just, makes me like sit up tall. Oh yeah, I am. I'm a child of God. So that helps. That helps to stay positive. Have to. And then sometimes going into the feeling of sadness is good too. Not saying that you have to run away from every emotion or embrace every type of emotion as it comes or whatever, but exploring the reason why it came, and then releasing it, letting it go. You don't keep it. You want to release that. Let it go.
I like that. Let it go. Feel it. I take notes, girl, when I get into these conversations, because I learned so much. Feel it and let it go.
Yes.
So I guess that also ties into my next question. What do you do? Because death never comes at a convenient time. We know that. What do you do when you are down, but you still have to show up to support another person in their sorrow or difficulty?
For me, I compartmentalize. I can put it over here. I can put it, I can do it, you know what I mean? I can put it over here until you're, you know, um, for you, because I'm used to showing up for everybody else except for myself at times. So
Mm,
it's, I find it easy to go support others or to support, it gives me something to look forward to. And it gives me, when I know that I have a task, or I know that I made a commitment to somebody, I'm going to do that thing like 100%. I'm going for that 100%. That's how I cope. And then I can, when I come home or, go in my secret place, I can do that. I can go in that place and, do what I have to do and emerge from that state and be able to help you.
that's powerful. So many times, and that's why I really was looking forward to having this discussion with you today, because I think so many times we get stuck in our stuff and we're not able to put it aside for somebody else. You know what I mean? Sometimes it seems so big in the moment for us. So for you to be able to say, you know what, in essence, I take a break from it. I put it over here.
Yeah.
And I go do this thing, I think that's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing that you can do that. So Queen Kimberly, when people hear your story, what do you want them to know? What's the one thing you want them to know?
It's a few things, but one that's at the top is that God mends broken hearts. He mends broken hearts. He slowly but surely mends hearts, and he will turn your mourning into dancing. I just want them to know that by embracing those opportunities that life presents itself, because life isn't always fair, or it's not always flowers and roses. We are going to have to go through some things. That's why compassion came. That's why Jesus came to to redeem us back. So if we were all perfect and all there, we wouldn't have to mourn. We wouldn't have to be sad when someone else passes away, because we would know for sure. But since that's not the case, I just want people to know that going through the process and not burying the process is of true essence. It is of important. It is imperative that you go through it. If you do not go through the process, you will get sick and you will not know what is on the other end, or you won't know it. You'll continue to. That's how we get stuck, by not acknowledging or not accepting what is. We get stuck. Sometimes we get scared to go through the process. It's painful. I'm not saying that it was easy, because it wasn't. It wasn't. It took time. It took effort. It took intentional behavior. I was intentional about, about embracing those, those feelings and those things that came. I wanted to learn from it. I wanted to grow. I didn't want to stay stuck, because that's how I felt at times. I felt stuck. But if you want to be happy, if you want to be happy again and you want to dance again, go through that process. Go through the grief. Go through grief. Go through it. Don't avoid it. Don't avoid it.
If you want to be happy again, go through the grief. That's not a thing that we hear all the time. And I'm glad that you said it. Because I think, right, we don't have these discussions.
Right. Yeah.
And then
because it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. And we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it when we're in the process of it.
Right.
Because a lot of times we're worried that we'll make other people uncomfortable. It's not socially acceptable to walk into a room and burst into tears, unless you're me. Everybody who knows me knows that I will cry in a minute, and y'all just have to get over it. But it's true, like we avoid it, we run from it, and we don't prepare one another for it. I think one of the greatest gifts that my grandmother gave me as she was passing, as she was in those last few months of her life, was we sat down together, we had lunch, we shared, and we left. I tell everybody, we left no moment unresolved.
That's beautiful.
So when she passed, there wasn't grief per se on I mean, yes, of course I felt that I missed her, but I didn't feel like there was anything. I think a lot of times the reason that people grieve so terribly is because they feel there was unfinished business.
Yeah.
And so that's made me be more intentional. Many years ago, I lost a good sister friend. We hadn't, it was one of those things where we would talk from time to time, but whenever we talked, there was no time that had passed in between.
Yeah.
She called me. It was just after the new year, and she called me, and I had been, I was doing daycare from home at the time. It was the end of my day, and I was just exhausted, and I just could not. I said, "Oh, not today. That's going to be a long call, and I can't do it. I'll call her back." The next day, I said, "Ooh, I need to get back to her," but I was busy. A third day, I didn't call her back. And then by that fifth day, I was getting a call from another mutual friend that she had passed.
Oh.
She had a pulmonary embolism, and she shot the clot. And I felt, in that moment, I felt so guilty. I felt I should have. Why didn't I? And I grappled with it for a very, very long time. It was a hard thing to manage and process. And looking back now, but that's one of the reasons why, if I love you, I'm gonna tell you I love you.
Yeah.
Nobody hangs up from a conversation on the phone with me without hearing I love you. I messed up one day, was talking to a telemarketer, and I was like, "Oh, I love you," because it's such a habit.
That's funny.
It's me. I'm the weird one. But it's become such a habit. I don't leave my family without saying I love you. I don't leave people that I love without saying so, because we don't know. Right. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us. And it's so important. I tell people all the time, when they fuss and fight or whatever, I'll say, if that's the last thing you get to say to that person, will you be okay leaving it that way?
Wow.
So I'm loving the fact that you are unpacking this, that you are sharing this with us. Your story is so incredible. And like I said, I did not know, I've known you for a while, and we've been queens and sister friends for a long time, but I did not know the details of your story. But I would say that you are doing Gary's memory proud, for real. Because, like I said, to be able to say, you know what, I went through it. Some days I'm still going through it, but I made it, and you can make it too.
Yes. That's
powerful. That is so powerful. And you don't just, I know you don't just say it. You walk it out. You do it. You live it every day. So tell me this, because you did say that some days you have those days. How does this tragic event in your life affect you today?
How does it affect me? Well, when I look at my children, I see him. So, yes, I'm affected, but not like I was affected when it first happened and I was going through that period of my life. Um, I would say I'm affected positively from it. Had I not had that relationship with him, had I not been married, I would not have had my three beautiful children. I would not I would not be the person I am today had I not been in that relationship. And I am grateful to God that I had him while I had him. But I'm also grateful for the opportunity I get to create this life I have now as a queen, as an entrepreneur, as owner of a few businesses, as one who um, is willing to share her gifts with others like me, and with others who aren't like me. Just letting you know that it is light at the end of your grief tunnel. Not that again, not that you aren't ever going to grieve again or ever going to grieve that particular loss again, but you can learn to live with it. You can learn to live with it and discover those deep hidden treasures that lie within you if you do the work, if you're willing to do the work. So yes, I would say it's affecting me now positively.
Wow. That's turning mourning into dancing.
Yes.
Well, Queen, we have come to the end of our road. I'm out of questions. But I'm so
Not
grateful.
you, Terry.
Girl, it happens every now and then. Nobody believes it. Everybody thinks she can talk forever, and that's true most of the time. I just want to thank you so much for this. I've gotten so much out of it. And I'm not a medical doctor. I just play one on TV, but I always like to, I always like to give our listeners and our viewers a little prescription for how they can get through their next storm. And based on our conversation today, my prescription says acknowledge the grief, embrace each stage, find your person, that compassionate, listening, judgment-free ear. Connect with someone, either in person or on the phone or via text, however you need to do it. Meditate and breathe deep, baby. Feel the pain and then let it go. But most importantly, remember that God mends broken hearts.
Yes.
Girl, you didn't even know you said all that, did you? But today's prescription came right from you. So listen, what about you? What about you? Are you ready to live again, laugh again, love again? Are you ready to take that next step and live in freedom? Did you hear something today in Queen Kimberly's story that resonated with your heart? I'm going to give you some resources. In the comments, I've created a group called Release Me on Facebook, and you'll be able to connect with her. If you are in the stage of grieving, whether it is the loss of a spouse, a child, a loved one, or like she said, maybe you've lost a job in this season and you don't know who you are. Maybe you've lost friends. Something has happened where you've experienced the loss, a trusted family pet. That can be devastating. Don't dismiss the grief in that. I want you to make sure that you connect with us, that you reach out. We are so excited and would welcome being able to walk with you through this time of difficulty and grief. Queen Kimberly, thank you so much for coming today, for giving me the phrase Queenversations. I'm loving it. And I really appreciate you coming, and I love you so much. And we will definitely make sure that your info is in the Release Me group so folks can reach out to you and connect with you.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything you want to leave us with?
What I want to leave you with is that I want you to stay encouraged. I want you to know that you will get through this experience. You will dance again. You will live again. You will laugh again. You will love again like never before. God does mend broken hearts.
And with that being said, this is your girl T Bird. Thank you so much for joining us for Queen Conversation. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and share this with somebody who you think it will touch, somebody who needs to be uplifted. We love you. Bye-bye.
My day, baby, can you feel my prescription? My prescription, baby.